So these are the notes for evolution. I'm going to go through and talk about evidence in this video to support the theory. So go ahead, take a look at the top of the screen, evolution, the slow process of changing in organisms over a long period of time. The basic theory of evolution is that life forms have evolved from earlier forms. Now that you're in biology, life science, you talked about evolution last year a little bit in earth science, but now we're going to talk about the life piece. So there are several sources of evidence to support the theory. We first look at the geological record. You did learn last year in earth science about radioactive dating of rocks. It gives us the age of the rocks. So then when we see the fossils in the rocks, we can determine where that life form falls in the timeline. So let me put my pointer on. So these fossils are older compared to these up here. There may be a Regents question that says it may layer these or letter these layers A, B, C, D, E. If it said which one is the oldest, you would pick letter E. Those are the oldest fossils. Now that we know the geological record, like I just said, we're now looking at the fossil record. A fossil, though, let's talk a little bit more about that. You did a little bit of this in earth science as well. They are remains or traces of a once living organism. The fossils found in the younger layers are more complex than in the older layers. We definitely have evolved to be more complex. We see this in the completed fossil records like the one below. By studying the changes in the fossils, it indicates a gradual change from simpler to more complex organisms. Similarities among fossils indicate possible hereditary relationships among organisms. This is one of the more complete fossil records, and it shows the horse. Okay, you can see how things have evolved over time with the toes, the 4 toes, 3 toes, okay, a little bit. They get bigger, taller. You can see kind of how they've evolved. Here's a couple other pictures of fossils. There's tons of photos we could show you, but trilobites are the oldest ancient marine arthropod fossil, 525 million to 500 million years old. A lot of you are familiar with the dinosaur fossils. They're from 230 to 65 million years ago, the Mesozoic era. We can also look at comparative anatomy. We can compare the structures of different organisms, which show similarities. A homologous structure is similar structures between organisms. Here's a great example. You can look at the arrangement of bones, the arm, the human arm, the bat wing, birds. You see the humerus, which you learned earlier this year when I got out the skeleton. Very similar. You can see the cat there, the bird, the horse. Vestigial structures. These are structures that are reduced forms of functional structures in other organisms. The theory predicts these features become smaller over time till they are lost. Now, I love this one right here in the eye. That's a great shot. That's called, can you see it? Oh, whoop. The nictitating membrane, it's called. Oh, there it is right there. Nictitating membrane. So the animals that go underwater, that covers the eye so it doesn't dry it out. So in a frog, when we do the frog dissections, which now we won't be able to do with this closure, but you have to, on the frog, identify that whole nictitating membrane. The dew claw shows when like the dogs didn't walk, like were flat-footed. This over here shows the pelvic bone in a snake. I don't know if you guys are aware of that, but you can see the pelvic girdle and the coccyx right there coming down on snakes. On the skeleton, they're reduced forms when they had the appendages, which they no longer have. The tail, everybody always likes the tail pictures. Obviously, if this would happen, it's not that common. If someone is born with it, they often surgically remove it right at birth, especially in this country that would happen. Some places in the world where there's third world countries where they don't have the medical care, you'll see pictures, people older still with them. A lot of my students usually know about the tendon. See how their wrists are? If you put your wrists up, This tendon is attached to an ancient muscle, okay, the palmaris longus, which was primarily used by tree-dwelling apes. It's no longer being used, okay? These indicate that we've evolved from a common ancestor. It helped them move from branch to branch. They're actually using this tendon, since we no longer use it, when they have to do facial surgeries. They remove it from the wrist and use it in the face. We can study embryos, comparative embryology. It involves comparing embryological stages of different organisms, even when the adult forms are quite different from each other. So look at those similarities in these embryos. This again is indicating a common ancestor. So here you see it in early development with the embryo, a little bit later. You can see the first two start to change a little bit, the fish, the salamander, but look at the tortoise, the chicken, the hog, the calf, very similar. The rabbit, the human. Here it is a little bit later. The last four, the hog, the calf, the rabbit, and the human, stay very similar. We can also look at cells, cytology, comparative cytology. Involves looking at organelles of an organism. Similar parts indicate a common ancestor, the mitochondria in plants and animal cells. Also, comparative biochemistry. This involves looking at the chemical and genetic makeup of DNA of individuals. Common characteristics, again, indicate a common ancestor, that we've evolved from a common ancestor. So they show the amino acids that differ from the human hemoglobin from the other organisms. Here you can actually see the E-gel, the bands in the DNA. Look how closely some of those banding patterns are. And that is it for the evidence to support evolution. We are now going to move on in the notes with the next video and talk about the theories over time.